The last several versions of SQL Server has added a lot of new time capabilities. That was true in 2008, and in 2012 we've added a few more. Let's look at one called Date from Parts. Let's go select Date from Parts, but what we're going to do inside of the parentheses is put in 3 integers that together will construct a date. The first integer will be the year 2013, the second integer will be 5, which is May, and we'll say it's the 2nd of May, so we'll put a 2 as the final parameter. Let's run this. We can see the date is 2013, May 2nd. All right, what happens if we run this and we don't select a day? We just say May 2013. Will that default to the first or the end of the month? What does it do? It says, sorry, you need to put in 3 arguments. Okay, so you have to pick the day in order to get the exact date. Now, in order to run this next example, we're going to have to run a special reset script. Please make sure that you open up the reset script called 9 Special. SQL Queries 2012 Volume 4 Chapter 9 Special Script. We're going to open this and run it, and it's going to put a lot of extra stuff in our DB Basics database. You can now close the reset script, and let's make sure we use the DB Basics database and say go. Select just that. We'll even comment this out so it's not in the way. And there we are in DB Basics. Now, we're going to look at a table called vSales. Run this, and here we can see we have invoices, but we don't have dates. We have a bunch of fields. Here's an integer that says 2009. Here's the first month, which is January. Here's the third date, which is the 3rd, hours, minutes, seconds. And we want to turn all of these individual parts into an exact date, or an exact time, or an exact date time. Well, the only one we've learned so far is the date from parts. So let's say date from parts, and in the parentheses we're going to put the order year field, and for the month we're going to put the ord month field, and for the day we're going to put the ord date field. Let's run this query. There we go. Now we have a date. This looks great. Hard to consume by external systems if we don't have a name for this expression field, so let's alias this as order date and run it. That looks a lot neater. The date from parts function took 3 parts to make a single date. It took the year part, the month part, and the day part. Now, if we were going to do time, we could have hours, minutes, seconds, fractions of seconds, so that function would take a few more arguments. Let's see how that works. Let's go select time from parts, and in the parentheses, we're going to start off with the biggest part of it, the time, which is the hour. And then we're going to say minutes, so we're going to do 8:32 in the morning at 45 seconds. Now we're not done, because sometimes you want to measure things more precisely than just seconds. So we'll say this is 0.5 seconds. Now, am I sure that that's 0.5? And not 0.05 or 0.005? Well, the way we can be sure is to say there's only 1 decimal in this equation. Let's run this, and there we see 8:32 a.m., 45.5 seconds. Now, if we copy this exact same expression and we put a 2 for the last parameter, watch what happens to the second fraction. It's 0.05, not 0.5. So what happens if I say 4 for the last parameter? Then this is 8:32 a.m., 45 seconds, 0.0005. In other words, it's 5/10,000ths of a second. What if we don't want seconds at all? Maybe we'll just change it to 0. What happens then? It says, uh-oh, you got an error message because you're trying to give me some precision and you haven't allowed enough room. Does that mean we have to use fractions of seconds? Not really. What we can do is we can say, I don't have a fraction of a second and I don't have a second. Put zeros for the last 2 arguments, and that works just fine. So how do we use this on the vSales table that we just did an example on from the date from parts function? Well, let's query it first in its raw form. Let's go select all fields from vSales, and let's run it to see what that looks like. in order to get the time of invoice number 2, which appears to be 2:22 and 41 seconds in the morning, 0.473. So I've got 3 decimal points, just under half a second. So to try this, let's add an expression field in our select list and say time from parts. And in the parentheses, we're going to go ahead and put the hour field in called ord hour. And we'll put the minutes in for the ord min field. Now we'll do seconds from the ord sec field. And finally, we have order in milliseconds. But we're not done because we haven't specified the fractions yet. We're going to start off with a 1. And this isn't going to work because if we're going to have 0.473 seconds, we need more than 1 decimal point. Well, that's a good idea. So let's allow 3 decimal points. And there we see it's 2:22 and 47 seconds in the morning, 0.473. Well, date from parts took the year, month, and date and turned it into a date. And time from parts took hours, minutes, seconds, and even fractions of seconds and turned it into a time. But what if we want to do a date time? In other words, say January 8th, 2013 at 4:33 p.m. and 674 decimals of a second. Well, we can do that with another function called date time from parts. Now, we're going to have to start off with the biggest one first, the year, and then the month, and then the day. And then we'll set an exact hour, and we'll do 8:32 a.m., 45 seconds, and for the fraction, let's just say 5. Let's run this. Notice, we don't have to specify the fraction of a second because this is milliseconds, so it's a 0.007. What happens if I do 500? Then it's 500. It rounded it as close as it could. How about 650? And it goes to 650. How about 651? It stayed at 650 because that's the nearest precision that a date time can do. Look at these 2 select statements. They both say February 5th. One is in 2012 and one is in 2013. Both of them are 5 days into February, so 5 days ago it was the end of January. But how far away are they from March? Maybe it's about 23 days, or it could be 24 if it happens to be leap year. In other words, what is the end of the month for 2/5/2012? And what is the end of the month for 2/5/2013? Well, let's find that out. Let's take this first one, and let's say end of month, and put it in a set of parentheses. And let's run this. It says the last day of that month is February 29th, 2012. All right, what's the end of the month for February 5th, 2013? That one is February 28th. So, although these are the same date in February, they don't have the same number of days left until the month has run its course. Let's look at the sales invoice table right here, and let's narrow it down to just getting 2 fields. Let's get the invoice ID and the paid date, and run it. There we go. Let's narrow it down to just getting the records that are from the year 2012 by saying where, date part, and we'll get the year from the pay date, and that will be equal to 2012. Now, we won't get 1,885 records, we will get the 460 records that were done in 2012. Now, we want to look for the ones that are in March of 2012. So let's do another part of our criteria and say and date part for the month for the paid date is equal to 3. Excellent. Here's the 44 records where we had sales in March of 2012. Let's say that there's been a special that was run that month. If someone paid X number of days before the end of the month, then they get a special credit on their next purchase. Something along those lines. So it looks like this person paid well before the end of the month. This person paid pretty far by the end of the month. And this person paid about 7 days, 7 days before the end of the month. Well, let's find out exactly how far before the end of the month they paid by finding out what the end of the month is. So let's make an expression field, and we'll say end of month for the paid date, and we'll alias that as end March and run that. And we can see the end date for all of these days here. Well, how far is that from when they paid? We need to take the end of March value and subtract the paid date value and get the difference between the dates. Well, we learned that that's the date diff. So let's copy the end of month expression field down so we have a second copy and put a set of parentheses around it. Notice it still runs. Both fields show us the ending date of March 31st. We're going to take the end of month value and subtract it from the paid date value. Let's do it like this by doing date diff, the end of the month, subtracted from the paid date. The first record is 29 days before the end of the month. The second record is 30 days before the end of the month. And you know what would be a good practice? Give this new column a name, as, and we'll call it as days paid ahead. All right, that looks great. Lab 1.2, Skill Check 1. From the DB Basics database, query the vSales table using the date time from parts function and passing in the correct fields as parameters. Skill Check 2. From the DB Basics database, query the contestant table to show all the contestants as an expression field called completion date. This field should use the completion year, completion month, and completion day fields with the date from parts function. Skill Check 3. From the DB Basics database, query the contestant table to show all the contestants as an expression field called completion date time. This field should use the completion year, completion month, completion day, completion hour, completion minute, completion second, and completion millisecond fields with the date time from parts function. When you're done, your results should resemble the figure you see here.